Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining the session today. The topic of today's webinar is delivering IoT solutions through Microsoft technologies. This is the second in a series that we're running throughout the year. For those who are interested, the first session was recorded from December and was in the invite to this session if you'd like to go back and view that one as well. What we'll be covering off in this one is really getting down into how customers are delivering IoT solutions. And I have with me today Paul Saxon from eBECS, who will take us through a live IoT solution that eBECS have completed for a UK customer. But before we get on to that, what I intend to do is a little recap on the December session, which will just look at the high-level positioning for IoT and the very high level how we deliver it using our IoT solutions. So we've been spending a lot of time speaking with customers across the world and understanding what they're trying to achieve with IoT. And really, you have to lead with what is the business requirement, what is the problem. And as you can see from this slide, there are many reasons why people are looking at their IoT-style solutions. The ability to maybe innovate faster by looking at data that's being recorded back from devices out in the field so that they can improve their R&D facilities. Things like opening up new revenue streams, provide a better service to their customers, and respond faster to the market. There are a myriad of different solutions and requirements that the business are looking for that potentially could be achieved through an IoT solution. And I guess really looking at why all the fuss about IoT. And I think really it's the fact that IT and the market is really catching up with customer requirements. This is something that's been required for many years, but has been prohibitively expensive to deliver. But now we're seeing that the hardware is much cheaper, so things like sensors and gateways have now come onto the market and are far more readily available and available at a much lower price point. We have a much better ability to connect to devices through telco stacks. It's also easier to deliver these solutions. And of course, we have now with cloud computing the ability to store the data much cheaper and to manipulate it. But I think one of the things that's really interesting is that a lot of the time, the reason that we can now achieve IoT solutions is really through the advances in the data analytics behind that data. And we'll be running through that with the solution that Paul will be taking you through in a few minutes. And just going back to that conversation of IoT is really a business conversation, and this is something that has definitely been borne out through the work and research that has been run by Microsoft over the past few years. IoT solutions always start on the left-hand side of this slide. It's always about improving efficiency, and particularly this is around operational costs. Typical examples here are when you have to go and visit a piece of equipment or a solution out in the field. Only go there when you need to. Don't send a field force out on a regular maintenance schedule when there's actually no requirement to do so. I think a very simple example there is, why visit the dustbin when it's empty? Only visit the dustbin when it's full, or the piece of equipment when it's identified that there is a problem going to happen. And in that way, we're really, as we say here, reducing those operational costs. The next part is, what are the greater business insights that we can get from pulling in data from far more pieces of equipment, different data sources, and merging those together to see the effect of that across the business and giving greater insight. And the final part of this is transformation of the business. Sometimes a little more difficult to have that discussion, but a lot of our customers are looking at how IoT can change their business services and their revenue streams. So in the next few minutes, I'll just run through how Microsoft is delivering IoT at the moment, and this will take us through the high-level technology stack, give you an update on where we are with our IoT solutions, and give a couple of examples of the customer solutions that we have in place right now. So we provide IoT solutions through our cloud solution, through Azure. Many reasons for this. As I mentioned earlier on, there are very large reductions in cost when you're using a cloud computing-based solution. You also have the ability to have worldwide data centers to give you that local connection. But really importantly for us is there are a number of services that are provided within Azure that allow you to achieve IoT connectivity and IoT solutions. And we have a whole host of different services that are brought on board with Azure depending on what your customer requirements are. And for us within IoT, it's about this stack. So if we start on the left-hand side, we have our devices. We are agnostic when it comes to the operating system. You may even have devices out there that don't have an operating system on that require then a gateway type solution. But what we're looking for is requirements from this end device to connect into Azure. And for that, we now have our IoT Hub service. This is a massively scalable pipe to ingest data from remote devices into the cloud. And to give you an example here, an IoT Hub can handle 1 million transactions per second. What it also does is the device registry, device security, and command and control, so that you can send commands back out to the device depending on what you want to do with that particular data stream. The next important service that we find within IoT solutions is Stream Analytics. Again, massively scalable, and Stream Analytics is there to look at the data in flow and make immediate decisions based on the triggers that you want to identify. One of the other areas that you may be interested in is Azure Machine Learning, another service within the cloud. This is the sort of tool that would be used by a data scientist, and this is where you predict what is going to happen dependent on the information streams that you have in. So this may be as simple as identifying that a piece of equipment may be about to fail based on the data that you've received from the sensors. The final part of IoT is it's really going to end in either a dashboard or a command or poke to someone or something to do something. So for that we have great solutions like Power BI, which is a fantastic tool to mine data and to produce real-time graphing on what is happening with those particular devices. We also have mobile services, so you may need to immediately identify to field force or an employee that they need to do something. That's where mobile services get involved. You may also need to enact an action to a line of business application like CRP, ERM, or your field force automation solution. You may also want to send commands back out to the device based on the information that you've received, which is where the loop continues around to IoT Hub to send a message out to the device to enact a particular action. And just to give you an example, and these case studies are all available on the link at the bottom. Here are some examples of some of the customers that have been using our IoT solutions to deliver the solution that they're looking for. I think interesting ones are ThyssenKrupp elevators. Again, looking at how elevators need to be maintained rather than just visiting them every 4 weeks just because you need to. Go there only when there's going to be a challenge or when you've identified there's an issue. Autoleap, also a very interesting case study based on electric car vehicle leasing around Paris. And the final one, Rockwell Automation, another great case study there of how they are using IoT to pull in data from very remote pieces of equipment on pipelines and from petrol stations in order to ensure that they deliver the right solution to their customers. As I said, all of these are available on the website, the link at the bottom, and I'll follow that up with the links again at the end of this conversation. So just moving on to latest developments. We had the services that explained earlier on. And one of the things that we did was looked at the IoT projects that we've been delivering and basically looking at how they can be delivered a lot faster, how we can enable proofs of concept, for example, or proofs of value to be enacted much quicker. And when we looked at the type of IoT projects we've delivered so far, they really fall into 3 broad categories. You have remote monitoring, so reporting the news, asset management, controlling the device, and then this whole predictive maintenance side. So we released IoT Suite. And IoT Suite there is to improve or increase the ability to deliver an IoT solution on time and much faster than before. And what IoT Suite does is provides pre-configured solutions based on these three particular scenarios and creates that service connection between the services that we showed before. And it does this very quickly. So once you log into the IoT website, the IoT Suite website, you can very quickly create these pre-configured solutions. It takes, within half an hour. And here's an example of what you would see when you go into AzureIoTSuite.com. As you can see here, we have two different solutions you can run up in this particular example, one for predictive maintenance and one for remote monitoring. And just before I hand over to Paul, I'll just very quickly show you what happens once you click on either of these two solutions. So for the remote monitoring, the first part is that those services are connected in a pre-configured solution to achieve remote monitoring. And also a solution acceleration dashboard is created as well. This is not the finished article, this is an accelerator. It's here to give you an idea of what can be achieved with IoT. So you have a whole bunch of virtual devices down here on the alarm history side. In this example, we have fridges. You can change the value of these fridges and change different parameters. You'll see on the top right, we have the telemetry that is affected by those fridges. At the bottom of the screen here, we have some trending, and in the top left, the GPS location of the devices. So this is the sort of thing that you can provide to the board to say we believe that IoT has a place within our business. We're looking for some funding, but here's just an example of what can be achieved. And then the second part of the project is really configuring this solution, which is where you would engage with one of our IoT partners to create a solution that is specific for your particular business. And that takes that accelerator and produces this dashboard that will actually enable IoT solutions within your particular scenario. From the predictive maintenance point of view, again, when you go into the IoT Azure website, you'll notice that there's also the predictive maintenance side, and this will show you running over time with the sort of things that can be identified from a predictive maintenance point of view. So as you can see, it's a really great way to start up those early proofs of concept. And just to give you an idea of how we license the IoT Suite solutions, it's really based on the total number of messages per day based in either of these two scenarios, plus the predictive analytics side. It's a conversation really to have with your Microsoft account manager, or indeed get in touch with me if you'd like to take that conversation any further, and we'll hand out our details at the end of this session. So with that, I will hand over to Paul, who will take you through the solution that's been put together by eBECS.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for the opportunity to co-present with you here today. So my name's Paul Saxton. I sit in the IoT team at eBECS, and I'd like to take you through our Berendsen customer story today. First off, I just want to introduce eBECS and who we are. So we're a global solutions provider. We're 100% Microsoft focused, founded in 1999. We've got over 300 active customers. We're a privately owned and managed business, and we are, as I said, 100% Microsoft technology focused. We've got offices in the UK, North America, and in the Middle East. And really, one of the things that differentiates us is we are focused on all areas of the Microsoft suite. We cover ERP, both Dynamics AX and NAV, CRM, Azure services, and as well as our data analytics and BI team, which covers IoT. So very quickly, I just wanted to introduce you to some of our customers and some of our main verticals, and really relate that to what we're seeing in terms of movement in IoT. So first of all, let's take a look at manufacturing. We've got some pretty well-known brands listed there under manufacturing. And this is really the area where we're seeing the most movement in terms of IoT. These are the types of organizations that are the most mature in their IoT journey. If we move across from manufacturing into distribution, we're also seeing a reasonable amount of movement in this area too. Very often we find that there are sensors out there that are already creating data, tracking vehicles, for example, tracking different types of delivery mechanisms and delivery pieces themselves. So I'm talking about connected cages and things like that. Moving across into service, a little less in terms of the maturity of IoT conversations in that area, but it is something that is increasingly becoming part of the conversation with that customer set and with that vertical. Retail, probably the least mature of the verticals on the slide, but it's certainly something that people are starting to take note of and take a look at. So that's probably enough information for you on eBECS. I'd like now to jump across to our customer story here, which covers Berendsen. And I'm sure that most of you on the call are probably asking the same question, which is, who are Berendsen and what do they do? So Berendsen's Europe's leading textile services business. That business covers workwear, facilities, flat linen in both healthcare and hospitality. They were founded in 1920 and they've got over 155 plants in 16 countries. They're a FTSE 250 company with a 1 billion revenue and over 150,000 customers. Now, I know the first thing that most people would do when they are looking at a new customer, a new partner, and certainly something that I did when we were first speaking to Berendsen, and that was to take a look at where that customer has offices. And I was completely taken by surprise to the sheer volume of plants and offices that Berendsen have. Doing a quick search on a map resulted in such a large number of pins. I find it very difficult to understand exactly where Berendsen didn't have presence. So the solution that we're going to talk about today specifically focused on that flat linen business, that provision of to the healthcare and hospitality industries. So what does that flat linen side of the business do? Well, they wash, launder, deliver, collect 1 million pieces of flat linen just in the UK per day. And I find that an absolutely staggering number. That's 1 million towels, bed sheets and linen collected, washed and returned to their customers every single day. This is a really very large operation, very complex. Now, at no point do Berendsen have enough assets to have 1 million pieces of linen sat on the shelves. So the management of those assets is really, really important. Finding out where those sheets and linen are and how many are going to be returned is very, very important to that business, but also incredibly difficult to track. These are very generic items that are flying through those factories at a speed that would be impossible for an individual to track. What's really interesting about Berendsen is that they really consider themselves to be a recycling business. If we imagine those towels go out, those bed sheets go out every day, and unlike most sales, Berendsen hope, and we'll get back to that piece in a minute, they hope to see those items returned and see them again. If we look then at that linen cycle, we can see that the customer uses the specific item, whether that's a bed sheet, a towel, or a pillowcase, for example. Once it's used, it is then set ready for collection. I think we all understand, for those of us that spend time in hotels, that that's a pretty big operation when it's just a single hotel. We can only imagine what it's like with 150,000 customers that we need to go and collect from. Once those sheets and towels and linen find their way back, they are washed, and that process itself is relatively complex. Managing the sheer volumes through the wash cycle, where very large industrial wash machines are used, and then each of those items are pressed. And I do shudder to think sometimes about having to iron 1 million things a day. That's a pretty big undertaking for anybody. Of course, once that item is ready, cleaned and laundered, it's stuck back onto a truck and delivered back to that end customer. Now, I think what we can see from the diagram that's in front of us is that there are losses that occur through that linen cycle. Losses both in usage and losses at that wash and launder piece. So if we just move on for a second, what really is the business problem that Berendsen have to tackle? Well, what was really interesting was the first time that we spoke to Berendsen, and we were talking, as Simon said, directly to the business owners, to the guys that actually run the laundries and have to manage that process. And they had some very clear objectives and some very clear questions that they needed to answer. One simply being, where is our linen? Now, this might seem quite interesting to some people to understand that they didn't really know where their linen was at any point in time. Of course, these are generic items that are being shipped out to the customer, and whether that item ever returns was something that Berendsen were unable to answer. How much of that of those assets actually leave that cycle? And of course, where in that cycle do they leave? Is that something that's happening at the customer level, or is it happening when the items come back into the wash houses? Also, how much do they really lose? So if we can imagine this idea that basically the factory is recycling towels and bed sheets, they keep feeding those wash machines ready to ship nicely laundered items out to their customer every day. They only start to understand that there has been a problem, or that items are starting to leave that wash cycle when they don't have enough assets to feed the machines with. And really, what did that look like? Well, it was millions of pieces per year. There's a very large number of items that are going missing. So with that, let's just take another jump across and think about, where did Berendsen think that these things were going? And of course, we can all guess as to where bed sheets and towels are going at any one point in time. Well, let's be fair. To start with, we've got wear and tear. The assets themselves don't last forever. They are naturally going to degrade over time. We're going to get stains that aren't possible to remove. There's going to be tears and breakages. And so these assets are condemned and thrown away. Generally, that would happen at the wash house itself when they're inspected pre-wash. Of course, in some cases, there's genuine loss. Things just simply go missing. If we aren't tracking where those assets are, things can go missing. Theft is obviously a big problem. Not as obvious as you may think in some cases, so I think we can all guess as to what happens to some assets and how they find their way out of a hotel. They could be stolen actually in transit, for example. So, you know, maybe a cage is left in a car park and somebody helps themselves to a number of assets. But also, quite interestingly, for those of you that may have been lucky enough to recently have a child join the family, you're likely to have taken that lovely young baby home, perhaps wrapped in an NHS towel or sheet, well, or blanket. Well, that's likely to be a Berendsen asset. So I'm sure they'd be really happy if you wanted to return some of those for them. Abuse. I'm not sure how many people are going to cut little holes and run around a hotel for a fancy dress party, but I can imagine there's a large number of impromptu togas at Christmas parties that would equally be classed as abuse. And also items sitting on the shelf. Of course, the asset isn't owned by the end customer. So they tend to not be too concerned about a huge stockpile of assets that are sat on a shelf somewhere in a warehouse just in case they're needed. And of course, that can be a problem on a number of cases. One, it means that Berendsen need to buy lots more assets to allow that storeroom to be stocked so high. But also, those items are not going to be particularly pleasant when they're actually put out there on a bed or into a bathroom for you to use. So these are things that Berendsen really wanted to understand in detail. Okay, so we've got a good idea of what the business problem is. What was the solution? Well, of course, this wasn't a new problem. This is something that Berendsen had a good idea of about for a very large number of years. The principle, of course, is very easy. Let's count the individual pieces as they go through. Let's track them and count them as they come back. Of course, the issue here is there's such a large volume, it's not cost effective to do any kind of manual intervention. So, as Simon pointed out in his slides, there's been really a convergence here of technology that's allowed this to happen. What we really want to do is to scan things as they leave, actually as they're going through the factory and as they come back in. And 2 years ago, this wasn't something that was technically possible. The RFID tags weren't accurate enough. They also weren't resilient enough. So if we think about Berendsen and the way that the laundry happens, that ironing process has some very high weights applied to them to do the ironing process. The process of cleaning those items is pretty harsh in terms of temperatures, weights, and fluids. Data volumes were also incredibly large. One can only imagine the number of transactions that are required when you imagine 1 million items are being scanned 5 times throughout the factory every single day over a large number of sites. The data volumes that we have to deal with, the data volumes we have to ingest and store and then present back are very large. And quite simply, this wasn't something that Berendsen were able to undertake until very recently. So working with a hardware manufacturer, new scanning arcs were put in place, which are incredibly accurate and can scan an incredibly large number of tags in one go. So you can imagine a cage full of shiny, new, clean and pressed laundry going through a scanning arc and 1,000 items being scanned with a very high accuracy all in one go. That's something that I find quite interesting personally, because I do wonder why I have to wait so long in line at the supermarket and I can't just walk through a scanning arc and make my payments all in one go. But I'm sure that's something that those retailers are actually starting to think about. Of course, once we've got that data, once that data is starting to be tracked and captured, we need some way of ingesting that information from the device, sending it through the IoT hub, moving that through into storage to provide our analytics and presentation. So here we go with our high-level architecture of the IoT suite. I'm just going to jump across now to show you the exact elements that have been used at Berendsen, just to give you some idea. Now, first of all, on the left-hand side, we can see the devices. So at the moment, we have those RFID tags embedded into the towels and sheets. So for those of you that are interested, if you next time you're staying at a hotel, if you want to take a look at the sheet, see if you've got a little RFID tag sewn into the edge of that towel or sheet, you'll know that that has come from Berendsen. Things that are being worked on right now is taking a look at putting GPS sensors into those cages so that we can understand actually where those cages are when they leave the building. That information goes up into the IoT hub, where we start to stream the information and store it into an Azure SQL database at that point in time. In fact, since I put this deck together, which was very recently, we started to roll out the Azure Data Warehouse as well to help us take that analytics to the next level. We've built structures that allow end users to easily get hold of this information, to present this information back through things like Power BI and out to mobile services. Now, what's really important is that if we went back to that previous slide, there is programs of work that are going on to start to push out lots more of those services. So this is very much a phase one in terms of the rollout and an initial proof of concept. This was something that we focused on specifically to get information out there as quickly as possible to actually prove how straightforward this process can actually be. So with that, what's really the outcome that we've started to see at Berendsen? Okay, so now we can track the individual items that are going through that wash cycle. We can see where they've been sent out, where they went, who consumed them and when. And we can also understand when they came back. This really gives Berendsen the ability to better utilize those assets and understand how better to provide their service to their own customers, effectively making sure that they've got the right product at the right price at the right time. So if we think about why did this project work, and these are really comments that came directly from Berendsen themselves, they had a very clear business problem to solve. What was interesting was when we first started to talk to Berendsen as a customer, that at no point did we start to discuss IoT first. We were very focused on the business problems at hand and understanding what was going to add the most value to the business. The IoT suite effectively provided us with the right technology and the right functionality at a price point that was acceptable to the business. I think if we think about just how much technology is available to us through the IoT suite and how easy and straightforward it is to utilize that technology, I think we can all agree that we've got something really exciting to be working with customers and partners with. And also working with your partners, your Microsoft account managers, to help better understand the functionality and the capabilities of the IoT suite to make sure that a solution is built out that really suits your needs as a customer. At eBECS, we have a very clear mantra of following rapid return. That's really building proof of concepts out, really constantly prototyping solutions and proving that these things work. For me, as a keen cyclist, I had to get a slide in there with some bicycles, but I think it really shows what works best in terms of getting solutions out there. Start small, start with your training wheels, and obviously aim for that final piece where you're going to be taking part in the Tour de France, but that's something that's going to come further down the line. And of course, you're going to get incremental gains all the way through that process. So again, just reiterating that point, start small and think big. Resist the temptation to build an all-encompassing solution at day one. That simply will be biting off too much, far too much more than you can chew. Build a clear roadmap of where you're going to go. Develop that roadmap. Understand how to get to where you're going. Have your eye on that end goal. But of course, break it down into nice bite-sized chunks. And with that, I'm just going to hand over to Simon. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks, Paul. I really love this story. I think it's fascinating. I never knew there was so much in linen provision. I think it also demonstrates how important it is to clearly define the business challenge and then identify if IoT solution can resolve this. As I mentioned earlier on, there are a number of resources for further information if it's something you're interested in following up on. And these are the 3 websites that I would recommend. We have our Microsoft solution on the Internet of Things, which will provide you those links to some other case studies, more information. Anybody who is interested at spinning up a version of IoT Suite, we have Azure IoT Suite.com, and eBECS have their own Internet of Things solution website, which will give you some more information as well. So please feel free to review those or indeed get in touch with the team, and I will provide our email details after this. As Paul mentioned, you know, the success to an IoT project really is about finding something that is small and can be achieved fairly quickly. We have a number of areas where we can help you on that, whether it is identifying your architecture or the hardware requirements, or sitting down and trying to help identify what the first business challenge is that we're going to try and respond to. And then working with eBECS to run that first proof of concept or proof of value, and then moving that out into the pilot stage. So as I said, please feel free to get in touch if that's something that you're interested in exploring a little further. And in order to do that, here are our contact details. So please contact us if we want to take this conversation forward further. So the case studies, I think, really do help to bring this alive as well. Thank you again for your time. Thank you to Paul and eBECS for their time as well. And I hope to speak to you at the next webinar session. Thank you.